perseverance and passion, just getting up and continuing to push forward. I think we're all today we're looking for like, all right, how's the fastest way to get to this? What's the hack? And I think the hack is the work, right? And that's what we have to do. The work always, that's the consistent thing. There's no like catalyst that I can speed up with. That's what I found on my journey, that it's going to take time to do some things I want to do as long as I stay consistent and put in the work.
So this should be a conversation, never a presentation. I tell people all the time, be yourself or don't be nervous. And then I heard really great advice, which was telling someone not to be nervous, like sort of doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right.
They're going to be nervous or they won't. Then I heard someone who was really great, who was like, I think they were like a public speaking coach. And their advice to people who are just about to walk on stage was take that. You're not going to get rid of that energy. Nervousness is energy, right?
Right.
So they were like, I want you to channel it. Like think more like judo. Like judo, there's like no punching and kicking, from what I understand. It's more like using your opponent's energy or their movement against them.
Right.
Like do some judo. Like, hey, chill out, relax. That never, like the worst thing to tell someone to do is relax, because that just makes it worse. So like, I can't relax it. Don't you think I would have thought of that? So I was telling people before we hit record, like keep that energy, but understand I am here. Mm-hmm. My only goal is to get the most Derick out of Derick. That is my role. So Derick Simpson's on the show. Derick, welcome to the program, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm a longtime fan. I followed this, man, back when I was an assistant student, and I think you were still in school. So I think this is cool.
Wait, when did you graduate? When were you in school?
So, I should say which time. When I was in physical therapy assistant school, this probably 2015, maybe 2014. Trying to think exactly, but you had a friend of mine, Don Reagan, on, and that's how I found it. And I've been a subscriber ever since. So.
That's awesome. So what's your backstory? You said you went to school multiple times. Let people know what your backstory is. Help me understand.
Yeah. So right now, I'm a physical therapist. So my journey started. I went to Liberty University, got my undergrad in exercise science, and went from there. I thought I wanted to be a strength coach, but wanted to get into PT. So I went to, there's an assistant school near me, about an hour from where I live. So I went to PTA school. I did that, worked a few years, and then convinced my wife to let me go back to PT school. And so I did that. I'm a South graduate, South College, the hybrid program, 2-year intensive. Yeah. So I did that and worked as a few years as a PT. And then now I'm actually in full-time academia. So I teach in a physical therapy assistant program.
Wow. So you've got some unique insights.
Yeah. I feel like that. I don't know if everyone feels that way, but I'll contribute.
The question I'm about to ask is sort of impossible for you to answer because you only know what you know.
Right.
But my question would be, what do you think you brought to PT school as a PTA? Because most of the people, nobody, I think, in my PT class was a PTA. But you come in with a different background. Also, none of my classmates were radio DJs, so I brought that weird background. But it's impossible. It's impossible for me to not know what that's like because that's all I knew. But what do you think you brought to PT school, to your classmates, to your learning, with a background as a physical therapist assistant?
Yeah, that's a great point. There was actually 6 of us in my class that were assistants. And interesting enough, as you know, in PT education, you have some folks you lose each semester, right? And so what was cool about us is all 6 assistants, we started together, we finished together. So I'm not saying that's that's just a, small sample size, but, that, you can be successful. But the unique things I think we brought in, or I think the advantages we had were, we've been working with real people. We've made mistakes and we've seen what those have been like in a real life situation. And so it was great to go to PT school and get a deeper understanding of some of those things and really, where I felt those faults in my decision making or understanding, and I was able to fill those. But yeah, I think I was an ultra outlier there because when I went to PT school, I was a little older. I also had 2 children. I had a newborn and I was an assistant. So, trying to find my clique, was tough at first, but, it was great. It was a great experience.
So you don't like doing the easy anything. You're like, give it to me hard, man. Give it to me difficult. Make it extra difficult.
Yeah, that's what my wife says. I took it took me 12 years to get, a 6-year degree. So it's the longer, more expensive route. So
I read books, like weird books, like on ideas or ideation or, weird, things like that, creativity. And I think the author was Stephen Johnson. He talks about ideas in the view of, you close your eyes and you picture yourself on an infinite checkerboard. So it's just squares in any direction. And he calls it the adjacent possible. And he's like, we're all just sort of dropped on the infinite checkerboard at different spots in our lives. And he's like, people don't like square one because it feels like you're going back to zero. But it's not zero, it's square one. So first of all, let's look at it that way. And then he says, you can only move like a king. So you can go in any direction, but only one square at a time. And then he's sort of like, how do we get to an idea? How do we get to be the person we are now? Well, it's all these simple steps, these one squares at a time. And every time you go to a new square, so you went and you stepped on a square and you got a degree in exercise science. Now you're in that spot. And from there, you learned a couple things and you're able to take a few extra steps and you went to be a physical therapist assistant. When you went back to school, so you went back to square one, but you still had all the information, experience, knowledge, failures, successes that you had. So you started on the first day of PT school just like everybody else, except not just like everybody else. You weren't, because of all the steps and the squares and the directions the things that you learned, and then you took it back to square one again. But it's never square one. It's square 4,675. But it might feel like, oh, it's another first day of school. Here I go with my first day of school outfit and my backpack on. But you came at it with a different set of adjacent possibles, is what Stephen Johnson called them. He's like, you were able to take this step because of the step before that, because of a step before that, because of a step before that. It's all just steps before that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna you have to post that book because I've read a few books you posted. I just finished up Chris Voss's book. That was fantastic, man.
Wild, right?
Yeah, it really is.
I got that book, and for the audience, if you listen to the show at all, you've heard me, and I'm not paid by Chris, but maybe Chris, you want to hire me? I'll be your hype man. His book, I got it when I was trying to negotiate project rates. I was like, I don't know how to negotiate. So what do? I'm a little type A. I'm like A-. I'm like, buy a book. I don't know. And it was never split the difference. Negotiate like your life depended on it. And Chris Voss, if you haven't heard me talk about it, is a former FBI hostage negotiator. But the book's not really about negotiation. I mean, it is, but it's about communicating. Because he's like, listen, his whole job was like, I'm on the other end with a bank robber or a hostage taker or a kidnapper. And he's like, I can't threaten them. So that's not in his arsenal. He was like, what tools do I have? He's like, empathy and mirroring. And it's all these tricks, but they're tools. So how have you used some of those things in what you do as an educator now? That's kind of cool.
Yeah. I mean, now I just finished the book this week, but as I go through that, the calibrated, open-ended questions, right? Using those more strategically, and like the mirroring, or even identifying the three types he talks about. Those, there's the person that is, they're not going to listen to you until you are heard, right? Until they're heard. And so, it helped me identify some of those situations. And then really, the one I really appreciate and I can implement immediately is the tone. I love the tone, the late night DJ tone. I play with that a little bit with my kids, and like, there's really a lot in tone I think that's missed with not only patient interactions with students. I mean, that right there alone can really, set things in the right direction.
Yeah, he talks about with tone, it's not only the sound of your voice, but it's the speed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can, if you end a sentence on a high pitch, sort of sounds like a question, no matter what you're saying. And you can use those things. And I think those things are simple, but not necessarily easy. So I think the book, it's also well written. Every chapter is like a lesson. There's like a nugget in there, but every chapter starts off with, okay, there we were at this bank in 1997. And there's the place is surrounded. So he like grips you with these little itty bitty vignettes of a story, and his goal, like a fairy tale, I'm going to give you the story and then we're going to learn the lesson.
Absolutely.
I actually think I recorded a video, like a short, I do these like little reels or whatever, turn my camera phone on, and I was like, oh, you know what? Life and school are kind of backwards, not to knock education or anything, but life, you get punched in the nose with the lesson, or sorry, the test. Boom, I've been tested. Then you learn the lesson. So I could be on the playground when I was in elementary school, and I mouth off to the big guy and I get my teeth knocked in. It's like, well, I got tested, then I learned the lesson. Don't do that again. And I think school's backwards. It's like, here's lesson. Now I'm going to test you on it. And both are good, right? But how would you do that in academia? But I think it was good where his book was written where it was boom, test.
Yeah.
Now let's walk back and show you what I learned from that, or why was that successful? He was able to teach, because a lot of times you learn more from failure than you do success. Getting your teeth knocked in tells you what not to say or do during a basketball game. But he was able to give the little fairy tale and then go, hey, why was that successful? See what I did there? I almost did this. So yeah, it's a great book. The book I just talked about with Steven Johnson is called Where Do Good Ideas Come From?
Okay.
And he's just sort of this thinker guy. But,
Yeah.
all right, that's the first round. Usually I ask what you're drinking, but it looks like you're at work. I'm not going to ask you to be drinking.
Yeah, I got my my water bottle.
I want to thank Johnny Owens and the team at Owens Recovery Science for supporting the show for a couple of years. They've been one of our longest time supporters. Certification in personalized blood flow restriction rehabilitation training, BFR as the cool kids are calling it. OwensRecoveryScience.com is where you can learn more, get certified, and get the right equipment. Your hometown has a weird claim to fame, though. What is it? Where's your hometown, and what's the claim to fame?
Yeah. So I'm actually from Gretna, Virginia. So it's a very small one stoplight town. We're Southern Virginia, not far from the North Carolina border, going towards Greensboro. So, but what's cool is the TV show Moonshiners that was on Discovery Channel. Right, that's filmed in the county right next to us. Like the people that are on that show, their wives work at the school with my wife, which is really cool. Yeah, yeah. So I always think that's neat. I'll get people to ask questions like, "Oh, wait, that's near you?" I'm like, yeah, the moonshine capital of the world.
Do you want a parallel?
Yeah,
yours and mine. So this was years ago too. I think it was around when reality shows started to be a thing. Did you ever see American Chopper?
Oh yeah.
Those guys were from my hometown.
No way.
I went to high school with Mikey Tuttle. He was my year.
What? Where'd you grow up?
Upstate Orange County, New York. They were Orange County Choppers. Everybody assumes it's Orange County, California. But I'm like, if you watch the show, man, there ain't no palm trees. There's barely any sunshine. It's upstate New York. So it was wild. People all the time would be like, they're just playing that up for TV. And I was like, that's Mikey. That is Mike Tuttle. That's him. Like he was not, I'm sure they put him in weird situations, but he was not playing a part. That was him. And like his brother was a little older, obviously, because that's what older brothers, they have to be older. Was a few years older than us, but from what I knew anyway, they were not playing a part. They were them on camera. So, but it was interesting then, seeing this little part of your life, because a lot of things were filmed around here on TV, and you're like, that's weird. That's very strange.
Wow.
So moonshiners. So, all right. So I'll ask a follow-up moonshiner question. If you could create your own moonshine flavor, because of course, I mean, if you're known for that, you would never, of course, make your own moonshine.
Right. Yeah.
You did in hypothetical land.
Yeah.
What's your flavor of moonshine? What's good?
The some that I guess a few that I've sampled, just the like a cherry or a peach, they have, those are usually pretty smooth. I said as smooth as it can be, but
the first time I ever had moonshine, I was in college. And of course, when you're 19, 21, of course I was 21 years old. You're invincible. And I was like, I'll take a big old cup of that. And then when you drink real moonshine and you take it's not taking a shot. I mean, it's like gasoline, but this is jet fuel. It is not a small difference. So kids, moonshine, don't do it, or do it safely.
Responsibly, right?
Responsible. Yeah. So, you mentioned, Don Regan. He was somebody who really challenged me early. I mean, I think Don Regan, I got to bring Don back on the show because I interviewed him early in the podcast. And I remember sitting there during that interview and being like, he is asking me questions that I have to think really hard about, which is a sign of a really good question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was interviewing him, but he was asking me questions. And I remember being like, I don't even know it. It like sort of made me freak out a little bit. It's like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. Same token, that's the idea, is you want, when you ask people questions that make them think. So my question for you is, you've shared that failure is never the end of the road, right? So tell us a time, like almost Chris Voss, give us a story or some situation where you maybe faced failure and how it changed that adjacent possible, how it changed what you did or how you felt moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I was, when I was kind of writing things out, I was looking through some of those things. And one of the biggest failures for me was, when I got to college, I wasn't the most studious, my first year and some change. And so, I was writing all the classes I failed because, they ask you, what do you want to do when you get here? And, my first exposure to physical therapy was in my high school football weight room. We had a physical therapist assistant that also dueled as a strength coach, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And so, I was really inspired by that. But, and I'd hear him talk about like ATP and different things that my biology teacher was talking about. I was like, why is he talking about that? And so that made it cool and exciting. But when I got to college, and I didn't realize you got to take real tough classes to be a PT, right? So, on my journey, freshman year, anatomy, physiology, chemistry, physics, statistics, I failed every last one of those classes.
Really?
I did, yeah. Like I can remember, it's a funny story. My friend that we sat beside me in a lab practical, and I remember picking up a humerus bone, actually femur, and I was like, that looks good, like just really pitiful. But what I learned, those are a lot of failures, and what I learned is, I guess several things, but for me in that instance, it was the amount of preparation, right? I don't think was I really pushing myself to do what I think I could do.
Right.
And for me, it was kind of an after action report is what I'll call it, of you can do more with your efforts in these things. And they're scary subjects, but can you do more? And so, I think what that taught me is to reevaluate how I approach studying and how I get into learning these materials and all these different things. Because I was able to go through and with a new lens and take anatomy and do well with it. Take stats and do well with it. But that's why one of the reasons I went to assistant school, because I didn't have all the prerequisites to go to PT school. And so, that's where I later in life I had to, and that's another, segment of like, okay, and now I'm working full time and now I'm doing night classes and going through that stuff. So,
hey, where are you going with your PT career? That's not rhetorical. I want to know. Would you like to embark on an extraordinary patient care adventure? That's what they call it. Some people might call it travel therapy. Find out more at jacksontherapy.com. This is perfect for physical therapists who are eager to make their mark. Discover where your skills can take you at jacksontherapy.com with Jackson Therapy Partners. And here's a question for you. You frustrated with your EMR? Feel like it should do more? Be easier? Yeah. Take the next step. Maybe try something new. How about an EMR that's all in one? Seamless integrations of patient portals, marketing automations, and billing, all at an unbeatable value. Plus, switching over is a breeze. See what you can do with MW Therapy and their all-in-one EMR at mwtherapy.com. And how would you like to boost your bottom line and help more people? You can do both of those things without having to work more. Smarter, not harder, kids. Boost your clinic's revenue by $290 per patient per quarter by adding remote therapeutic monitoring. You've heard about it, but you're like, I don't know where to get started. Is it complicated? Well, what if you knew where to get started and it wasn't complicated? That's what Physiotech is here for. Kickstart your RTM at physiotech.ca. That's physiotech.ca right now with Physiotech. You pass those lessons off to your students too?
Yeah, what I tell them is, look, if I can go and be a physical therapist, I think anyone can do it. I think when I look back, I think, I'm not really good at any one thing. I'm listening to Jocko. Jocko has a book, The Leadership Manual, and he talks about in there that, I wasn't really good at any one thing. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was okay in areas. I was kind of a jack of all trades, but the consistent theme for me is that, like you talked about earlier, getting punched in the face, and I just get up. I get up and keep going. And you keep pushing through. And I think that trait, that grit is such an undervalued thing. It's accessible to everyone. I don't have to have that gift to, like, maybe I don't have the highest IQ or those things, but I can keep going forward.
Super successful people say that all the time. It sounds like they're being humble, and I think they are. Like the Mark Cubans of the world are like, I'm not the smartest guy. I just failed. And then I was like, okay, did I learn something from that? What is it? Don't do it again. He's like, that costs you too much. The second one costs you 5 times as much as the first one, hopefully. I tell people all the time, that's why my sport of choice for 10, 15 years was triathlon. And I liked it because I could be mediocre at 3 things in one day, but still do well. And then people are like, well, how does that make sense? So I was an okay swimmer, but if I swam against collegiate swimmers, dude, I get smoked. Like I'm not even in the pool anymore. If I cycle against cyclists, I'm not hanging onto their wheel, man. I'm getting left behind. If I run against runners, like straight up runners, I might hang for a little while. Running was my one thing that I loved a lot and I was decent at. But real runners, I'm not doing a 4-minute, 5-minute mile. Nah, I'm doing a 6. But, and then this was a coach that said, but Jimmy, look at the end result. You can't outswim swimmers, but you can outbike swimmers, because swimmers are weird. I can say that because I'm a swimmer. It's like we land activities, right? And I can outrun swimmers. Oh, well, suddenly my strength is the versatility. That's where you hear it a lot in the NFL combine. It's like when you see someone's position, it's like, this guy's a wide receiver from this school, whatever. A lot of times they started using athlete.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does that mean? It's like, they're sort of just pretty good at a lot of things. We don't know where it's going to depend on the system they're in. You get the right guy in the right system, and he doesn't necessarily fit somewhere else, but he shines there. And that's where the quote I like, which is, if you ask a fish to climb a tree, the fish will think it's stupid its whole life. But ask a fish to swim, and man, that thing will just go. And it's like, oh, so maybe it ain't you. And that's not to say you don't have ownership of your successes or failures, but like maybe you're in the wrong spot. And that's not to say just run away from stuff, but find out where you want to be, because maybe climbing the tree ain't right for you as a fish.
Absolutely. And I think that's, you alluded to that, once I figured out, what do I want to do? I'm taking these classes, they're really hard, but why do I want to do it? And once you connect that and I got a finish line, it all starts adding up.
Bingo. Yeah. All right. So exercise science, PTA school, back to PT school, back to school. Now you're in education. Like,
yeah.
Okay. So why was that a better environment for you as a fish? Like, why was this, walk me through that.
Yeah. I love clinical care, and I love and I'm actually still, technically on staff. I do some PRN because I like to do, still treat a little bit. But really the main thing for me is I feel like my impact can be a little bit broader, because this school here, they got a grant to start this program maybe 3 years ago. And so, right. So tobacco money was able to get this going. And so, there's a big need as far as rural medicine. There's not a lot of providers out here, and not a lot of people.
Tell people what the school is. What's the school?
Patrick and Henry Community College. It's in Martinsville, Virginia.
Got it.
But yeah, rural medicine is something that I've really gotten into, because when I was in practice in Chatham, Virginia, which these are all connected, within an hour, 45 minutes, 15 minutes. But what I saw is I had to be able to treat a whole lot of things, because people can't afford to drive an hour north, south, east, or west to get to different stuff. Right. And so it's hard for me to be a specialist, which again works with my personality of being versatile in a bunch of different things. So for me, it was like, here's an opportunity to, teach a little bit and be able to, impact the community, provide more people, and inspire. Really, my goal is to get people as passionate about PT as I am, and send those people into this community, and enhance the healthcare around here.
Yeah. And how long have you been in education? How many classes have you?
Yeah, so actually I just started here in August, so I'm only 6 months in or so. So my main job though here is the clinical coordinator. So I'm negotiating contracts to when we take our students and what's the best learning environment for them and all that stuff. But I do teach. Let's see, this is 3 courses I have to teach.
Yeah. I feel like I'm hearing a lot of elements in your story revolving around sort of like being grateful.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
How's sort of like using that? Because I don't think until the last couple of years, I don't think I ever thought of like being grateful as something I needed to practice, like focus on what are you grateful for? But how is like grateful or being grateful influenced your personal, professional life? Like how does that come in? How does it help success for you?
Yeah, I think it brings you back to center. When I sit and I've shifted from thinking about the things I'm grateful for every morning to now writing these things. And I think there's so much power from bringing thought to pen and paper, and you get to see it and kind of take a few minutes to what did you write down and what does it mean to you. And I think it puts me in a good place of like, man, I get to it's I get to versus I have to. An experience I had when I was in PT school was I got to volunteer some time with a spinal cord injury patient. I was more ortho sports, but this guy was it's a really cool story, and I can send you the information about him. But he was a C2 complete injury. He was a former Top Gun pilot, and he was actually an instructor. I mean, really cool guy, right? You go from flying these jets at incredible speeds, doing all this cool stuff, to now you're a C2, you're in a chair. And I had such a rewarding experience through that. I'm extremely thankful for it. But it helped me, start that gratefulness. What are the things I get up every day, and I would think, and the guy's name's Buddy, I would say, you know, Buddy would say, I wish I had those problems, the things that I thought were so big. And then I became more grateful for the things that I had, my family, my ability to go to work and all those different things. So,
Yeah. I think gratefulness is it's a good practice. I think we live in a world where it's go, 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 and I never have enough, and can I get more?
absolutely.
And but all you hear from is people who work in hospice or people who work with people from end of life. All they talk about is like the people at the end of their life talk about the regrets.
Yeah.
And it's never I wish I made more money. And I'm not saying money and you can't support yourself. That's not what I'm saying. But they're saying like, how come I didn't go watch Little League games? How come I didn't, when's the pursuit of more enough? There's a guy, David Meltzer, is a business guy, talks a lot on videos, like a Jocko, like a Gary V.
Yeah.
And he told a story about one year his dad and him didn't have the greatest relationship. His dad was go, 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 earn more. I'm a business guy and I'm a dad, but that's in the back seat. And his dad, for some birthday, like when he was 30 or 40, gave him a jacket, like a blazer. And he was like, oh, this is awesome. My dad finally like gave me something cool. And he puts it on. It fits perfectly. He tells the story and he goes and puts his hands in the pockets of the blazer and all the pockets are like torn out. Like he went in there and bought this nice $1,000 blazer, ripped the pockets out. And now David Meltzer is like, I'm pissed. Like here, I thought this was a great gift. Calls his dad. He's like, what the hell's with this? And I hate you. And he's like, you're just like me. He goes, nothing like you. I'm nothing like you. He goes, nah, he's like, you're trying to be the richest guy in the cemetery. He's like,
wow.
you can't take it with you. I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to show you that I want you to hang this jacket and never wear it. But I want you to look at it and just go hang out with your kid. Maybe the $20,000 deal, you're going to fly away and spend 2 weeks, whatever. It's not enough. It's never going to be enough. It's not the point. The point is not that. So he tells the story and he's like, that jacket, he's like, it like hit him and jarred him. He stopped him in his tracks. And he's like, I hung that jacket in my closet, the first jacket when you walk into his closet. And he's like, as a reminder, don't be the richest guy in the cemetery because it's just the juice ain't worth the squeeze on that. But that caused him to stop and be grateful.
Yeah. I think we have to listen to those, when we have those moments and opportunities. Because it's I think I have that same struggle, and you may can identify, but you're so driven and motivated to do all these different things. But I have to remember, my family that needs me and that I am, I don't want to miss those opportunities. And so that's a constant thing. And that's why I always ask people that I admire, hey, how do you balance being the best guy at this, but also being dad, being husband? How do you do those things? Because those are my struggles when I get out and I start to get excited and passionate that they pull so much of me that I don't have enough to give back to the people that need it most. So that's a great point. And then again, that grateful practice helped me center on those things and stay, don't get too far away from what's the main thing.
Yeah, you mentioned a word which I love too, which I don't think I understood what it meant or why it was so important, but the word is grit. And, Angela Duckworth has written about what grit is. Have you ever heard of Angela Duckworth's formula? She essentially was like, I'm going to go into West Point. I'm going to try to predict based on objective data or subjective interviews, who's going to quit and who's not. Because then we can go to companies and go, who's going to stick it out? Who's going to be the best lawyer? Who's going to do these things? And what she came down to, it wasn't IQ. It wasn't this. It was grit. But she's like, how the hell do we measure these things? And she takes her crack at it. And I want you to take your crack at it. Like, how do you define grit? What's Derick's definition of grit? And then why do you think it's like terribly essential for people in life or physical therapy? It doesn't really matter where. What is it? Why is it so important?
Yeah, I think of perseverance and passion. Those are two words that come to mind for me. And that, it's the ability and kind of like I talked about earlier, just getting up and continuing to push forward. Sticking it out. The grind. I think we're all today. We're looking for like, all right, how's the fastest way to get to this? What's the hack?
Yeah.
And I think the hack is the work, right? And that's what we have to do. The work always. That's the consistent thing. There's no like catalyst that I can speed it up with. That's what I found on my journey, that it's going to take time to do something I want to do as long as I stay consistent and put in the work. So that in a roundabout way, and hopefully that makes sense. Of, yeah, that's how I look at grit, and really that's how I embody. If I don't bring anything else to the table, I'll bring that.
Yeah.
I'll be consistent. I'll show up for you, and I'll keep working at it.
Yeah, I thank my parents a couple years ago for my mediocre athletic ability, my desire to want to belong. So I wanted to play all the sports with my friends, but I was clearly the smallest guy, the weakest guy, all those things. And I was like, I need, when the coach says do this drill, I got to do it better, because I know I'm going for the 9th spot on the baseball team. I know I'm going for I'm going
Right.
for the 3rd spot out of 3. Like I never walked on a court, put on ice skates, or did anything where people were like, oh no, Jimmy McKay's here, we're in trouble as the other team. It was never that, right? It was always, but it was kind of a cool thing, because then it taught me to be gritty, which is, Mike Tyson. I love this quote from Mike Tyson. So everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth.
That's right.
I've never worked on a project. I've never gone to school. I've never taken a class. And it went exactly like I thought it was. Not one time. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm just, but I think it's most of us. And it is. It's Seth Godin is a good writer. He calls it the dip. He's like, everything starts off great. You're on top of the mountain. And the project starts, and inevitably somewhere it dips down into hard, or not working, or not moving, or this might fail. And he's like, you got to be prepared for it. And that's where it's like someone who cares, someone who's gritty, they're going to push through that to get back up the hill. Someone just said the other day, I'd rather a passionate amateur than a lazy professional. And I was like, I hate to, agree, but yes, I mean, that person is going, because you can teach skills. You can't teach motivation. I don't know if you can, and that's where you can get into a debate, which I don't know the answer to. Can you teach grit? And I think situations or lessons teach grit.
Yeah, I agree. And making the opportunity.
Sounds like yours is failing all your classes.
Yeah, doing that, and then realizing, like I told you, getting a why, getting a goal, and then really my wife, I got to, she helped. I met her when we started dating. She really kind of helped me get through like some focused direction. And then you tie in my time with Don Reagan. I got to intern at their clinic when I was just an undergrad, and kind of seeing asking hard questions for me too.
Yeah.
But again, it helped me, because I think one of the things that learning through all that, we had a conversation one time that I actually got to work as a tech there after I volunteered for a little bit. And when I applied, it was 3 of us. It was me and then 2 other kids that were going to PT school. Like, they were way super outperformers, I thought. And he hired me, and I said, well, why'd you hire me? And he's like, because, you have the things that I really can't measure. You show up, you're punctual, you work hard, you do all these things without me telling you. Like, I can teach any of these skills that that other people have, but you have those base level things. So my grit got me that job, and I've never forgotten it. It's gotten me through every, phase of my career, my journey, and everything I've pursued.
You can't take that away from someone. You can put me in a new situation that I don't know the answer to the question, but you can't remove grit from that. Did you ever work in food service or retail?
I did. I worked at Walmart. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ding, ding. Like, I didn't work in retail. I went food service and catering. I worked for a country club, worked for restaurants, bar back, bartender, all those things, waiter. And I don't know if it's chicken or the egg. It's like, hey, for whatever, and the answer is people. If we're in retail or food service, your job isn't really retail or food service. Your job is people. Food or retail is how, but what you're actually doing is taking crap from people, giving back a smile. Yeah. If the solution that was designed by your boss or the company, it's eventually, again, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. It's going to fail. What do you do in that situation? And the answer is figure it out. And so I was sort of lucky, as I started as like a busboy at the local country club. And it was like, you saw how stuff comes together, and it's a whole lot of figuring it out. Nothing goes to plan in a kitchen. I mean, it does, but then it inevitably goes sideways, right? You do a wedding where nobody ordered the fish, and next thing you know, they all changed their order that day. What are we going to do? I'm like, we're going to figure it out. So the question is, do retail and food service, do they produce really great, gritty people, or do people with the elements of grit seek those jobs out because the people who don't have it wouldn't go anywhere near it? Again, that's chicken. I don't know the answer, but I do know whenever I hear people who are like, wow, I got punched in the mouth and I figured it out, I'm like, food service or retail? And they're like, yeah, how'd you know? I'm like, I'm super smart. It's just a pattern. It happens to be a pattern. Right. Childcare is another one. Like, people who worked like childcare as like in college and stuff like that. That's not easy. That is, oh man, that's people. Because your client is not just the kid. Your client's the parent too. Like that is a whole nother level of customer service. But it's people. It really is people.
Absolutely. Yeah. In the vein of children, it makes me think when I went to PT school, I had a 3-year-old, and my wife gave birth to our little girl, our middle child, on a Monday. I left for Knoxville, Tennessee that following Monday. So I mean, it was just so much like to throw on her as a team. But then I can remember nights in the recliner studying, holding the baby.
Yeah. She must have liked you, man. Because I mean, I would imagine she would have, the average person would have been throwing stuff at you like, you're going where, when, now?
Right.
Yeah. Let's play a quick game called Overrated, Underrated. Are you ready for Overrated, Underrated?
Sure, let's go for it.
Fat you just tell me if you think it's overrated or underrated or why. Thanks to ATI Physical Therapy, leaders in clinical practice with more than 900 of their clinics finishing in the top percent in merit-based incentive program for the third consecutive year. Find out more at atipt.com. Derick, overrated, underrated, the importance of traditional academic path in the physical therapy field. You didn't have a traditional path, so is traditional path overrated or underrated?
This is my personal opinion. I think it's overrated. I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. So
yeah, I think it's properly rated for you. And some people wanted to go to school, and that's all they wanted to do. And some people wanted to go do whatever they did. And so I think the profession is better when we have a mix of those people. I call them weirdos because I am one of them. Like, how many radio DJs are signing up to be PTs? I don't know, not a whole lot. Right. Overrated, underrated. Strength training for physical therapists. Overrated or underrated?
I see a push for it now more. I would say it's underrated. I still see underdosing, I think, when I go out and do site visits. I think that we can do a better job of loading. There's some great folks pushing that. And, but yeah, I think that's underrated.
All right. Role of mentorship, structured mentorship in professional development, overrated or underrated?
I think it's underrated because I think sometimes that's thrown around as mentorship is there. But what does that look like? Is there a structure? Like, we're going to meet and do these things? I think sometimes it's mentorship is a loose label. And what does that look like when you say mentorship?
I think it's right when it's right for you. I remember like being asked to do all these reflections. Do you ask your students to do reflections and whatever?
Yeah, well, getting into it, but yeah, in a roundabout way.
And I was, second career student. I wanted nothing to do with reflections. I didn't get any value from them. I thought they were a waste of time. I just did them to check it off. Yeah. And now I find myself doing that a ton. It just wasn't right for me then. I mean, you don't have 2 free minutes to rub together, now you're asking me to sit down and think. But if you think, it's like, yes, that is the purpose of you being here, is to sit down and think occasionally on the thing you just did, not just check the boxes. So yeah. I think it's different for all of us. Some of my classmates loved it and embraced it. I just looked at it as a means to an end. But I think it now, as somebody who's been graduated for a few years, it is terribly valuable. It is something that I get value from. Last thing we do on the show, Derick, we call it the parting shot.
This is the parting shot.
Parting shot brought to you by the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. Find them online at orthopt.org, the largest academy in APTA, with their current concepts of orthopedic PT, a great roadmap to take you from wherever you are to maybe taking that OCS exam or improving your orthopedic practice. Current concepts in its 5th edition, available now at orthopt.org. All right, Derick, no pressure, but mic drop moment, soapbox statement. What do you want to leave with the audience today?
Man, that's a tough. What would I leave them with? I think just grit, right? If there's a superpower that anyone can have and harness, it's that. Maybe you don't have the other things, but you have the ability to work hard.
Yeah. Be gritty. Yeah. In one of the formulas, I think that Angela Duckworth said, she said, talent times effort equals skill, right? So talent's what you're born with. Effort is how much you put into it equals skill. And then skill, what you earned, times effort again is achievement. And what she's saying in that is, I'm not a math guy, but man, effort shows up twice. And in math, people will say that means it's squared. That means it's not only twice as important, it's squared important. And that one's under control. I can't really change what I'm born with. Sorry, man. I'm 5'9". I'm not dunking a basketball. Okay, I can't change that. What can I change? And the answer is your effort. And that's where I think we lead to grit. So, Derick, appreciate what you do, man. Thanks for sharing your story. I think success for me is you said you listened to this podcast, a couple of years ago when you were in school. I think success is, I'm going to interview someone in 3 or 4 or 5 years and they're going to go, I listened to Derick's episode and made me want to change how I look at things, or maybe want to change a direction. How cool is that?
Yeah, I mean that, and really, I think that's my hope is like, sometimes you look at your story and you think, I don't know if anybody would get value from it, but maybe someone is in my shoes where they're like, man, I've not done well in this stage of my life, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean where you are. I saw a quote this morning that says, "Failure's a bruise, not a tattoo."
Ooh.
Right, and so and I was like, man, that's really good because that's what it is. It's a chance to learn and move forward.
I'm gonna go tweet that right now and sound really prophetic and smart. I'll Google and see who said it so I can give credit. I'm really good at quotes, but I forget who said it. But Derick, thanks so much for the time, man. Thanks for sharing your story. And that is the goal. Maybe someone else is going to hear about this and they're going to do something about it for themselves. That's the point, man. That's the whole thing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jen. I really appreciate the time and you invite me on. Thank you so much.
All right. This is the best conversations happen at happy hour. Thanks for coming to ours.